At Yerevan's main military cemetery, diggers are overwhelmed.
From the beginning of the war, there are funerals, memorials, and other events. It's a mess.
Artak Yenokian is among the bodies recently added to this sorrowful plot of land. He was just 20 years old.
Brave, courageous, determined, he always kept his promises and was strong.
The war between Armenia and Azerbaijan has claimed 2,371 Armenian soldiers' lives, according to the latest government figures. Azerbaijan has not disclosed its military casualties. For the defeated, grief is particularly bitter.
I'm against war in general. I think it should have been stopped from the very beginning. They should have done their best to stop the war. They studied diplomacy, politics, so they could manage this kind of situation.
At an office of the country's defense ministry, the constant influx of families looking for missing members paints a bleak picture. The death toll could be significantly higher.
We are not losing hope for as long as we don't have certain information.
Zahuri is looking for her son, who she hasn't heard from for nearly a month.
He's been serving for a year and 4 months and should have returned in June.
She blames Armenia's political elite for the fate of her child.
If oligarchs hadn't been robbing this country for the last 30 years, if they'd bought weapons and empowered our country, our children wouldn't die.
It will be some time until Armenians can heal from the losses inflicted on them by this round of conflict. Perhaps as long as it took Azeris to recover from their wounds. In an endless and tragic cycle where triumph can only be achieved through the other side's capitulation.
I think it's a waste that my son was killed. But I would never say that because he's going to be a saint to me, because he died for his motherland.
Annelies Borges, Euronews, Yerevan.
Well, Annelies is in Yerevan, so let's go there to speak to her now. Very good morning to you, Annelies. We've just seen there some of the devastation that's been wrought over the last 6 weeks. What about the political implications? Because the Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan, has been speaking today. What's he had to say?
Good morning, Rosie. Well, Nikol Pashinyan has said that he is the sole responsible for what is largely being perceived as Armenia's defeat in this latest round of conflict over the Nagorno-Karabakh. He said Armenia was practically forced into this conflict to secure territory and that soldiers who did their best to control the land eventually failed. He said that despite government investment in the armed forces, he said that it's not true that they were unprepared, but that they were faced with too strong of an opponent, Turkey, who Pashinyan accuses of direct involvement in this conflict through the supply of weapons and personnel. On whether or not he would quit over this crisis, Pashinyan said his sole objective right now is to keep the country running, to keep stability here in Armenia. He said all institutions continue to work despite multiple attacks on the part of the opposition. The opposition has been very active here in Armenia, organizing protests and, of course, the storming of the National Assembly last week. Pashinyan called for calm and said that the opposition will from now on be involved in negotiations over the Nagorno-Karabakh. During the war, that was not possible. Decisions had to be made quickly. But he said there is no going back on the deal signed with Azerbaijan because that would mean restarting the war. He also said he is in touch with U.S. officials and also Russian officials, including the President Vladimir Putin, with whom he discussed. He talked over the phone for at least 6 times, according to the Prime Minister. It's going to be, of course, very interesting to see how all this plays out, how Armenians react to this speech. They have been quite angry and disappointed. Many of them blame the Prime Minister for this defeat in the war. But Pashinyan has asked for calm and patience and said Armenians will get answers to all their questions.